before we get to solutions, we need the elected officials and government to understand that affordable housing is subsidized housing, right? And should be approached in that way, the way they do for new developments. But the problem is that policy in the past several years has been trying to implement this artificial affordability without accounting for costs. And housing has costs. It's just plain and simple. Many of these issues we have are math problems. And elected officials need to recognize that the same way a building will not get built and won't, quote, pencil unless the city is injecting a level of capital or even foregoing property taxes, that same approach has to be utilized in the preservation of this housing. When you have 10% of the stock, 100,000 apartments per the Rent Guidelines Board right now is cash flow negative, where their expenses exceed their rent. I mean, we have a problem here. And this is where lawmakers need to, concede to reality a bit. And even if they wanted to approach it in the way they do it with real capital A affordable housing, I firmly believe the city and the state just don't have enough cash capacity or capability to do so. And this is why it's imperative to work with private capital, because it is just a huge stock of housing. NYCHA is 177,000 units of housing, and we're unable to figure that stock of housing out. We're now talking about a housing stock 5 times greater, already in financial distress, already constrained by policy. And we think we can somehow cut costs and save this housing. We can't. So the model that we have to go to is a model, bringing it back to California, allowing for a vacancy reset. So this is not trying to undo the rent control system. I know there are policy folks and people in the industry who maybe have different opinions on whether or not rent control should be implemented, but the political reality is that it isn't going away. And so let's make it work. And the way you do that is through a vacancy reset, which, one, and most importantly, improves valuations, because then there's a real projection that this building can actually pay bills throughout future years. But also, to me, it's one of these rare win-win-wins. Right. I mean, a vacancy reset does not increase rent on any single in-place tenant today. Right. It doesn't cost the city or state government $1. And it brings housing supply on the market, softening free market rents. I mean, you tell me a policy that does all 3 of these things. It doesn't exist. Only this one. And for those unfamiliar with what a vacancy reset is, back to the scenario of you being that rent stabilized tenant, $1,000 rent, 20-year tenancy, very common in rent stabilization. After you live in that apartment, the property owner is able to reset that rent. Part of that reset requires the owner to invest in the unit, bring it up to today's housing code, lead-free, asbestos removal, upgrade electrical, upgrade water. I mean, these are old buildings. You have to take these opportunities to bring it to the new era. The next tenant comes in, agrees to the first rent, and then enjoys all the protections of rent stabilization, which is what rent stabilization was supposed to be, a price gouging measure, right? Not an affordability program that doesn't account for costs. So that is the way you do it. And that is also how you help the rest of the tenants in those buildings. Because what people have to understand, apartments in a building are very much like the limbs on your body. Right? You can live without a few. Too many becomes very difficult to navigate life. Yeah. And you need every single apartment to operate in its best, in the best possible way. It has to bring in revenue, it has to account for costs, and it has to help all the other apartments exist. Because listen, there will be tenants that still have rent stabilized rents that have $700 rents, and that's great for them. And elected officials will always want to protect that. But if we want to protect the person in that $700 rent stabilized rent, you need an ability to finance and invest in other units when they come on the market.